2.327 seconds, power allocation, divided by 12, plus the recharge delay, multiplied by skill perks, plus crew perks. It's a non-linear function, increasing to infinite as you approach the y-axis, but diminishing returns as the power increases. Considering firing rates, that's adjusted for burst weapons that What's up, shipbuilders? I have something to share with you. Your ship stats are wrong. They're wrong, plain and simple. The UI in this game is atrocious. In fact, it's worse than that. I've been working tirelessly, spending the equivalent of years of universal hours to bring you a tool that will easily and conclusively guide you to the best ship modules for any character at any level, with any perks and bonuses considered. In the process, I've worked to finally crack the code to determine the best weapons, considering any combination of power allocated and its impact on recharge rate, character skills, crew bonuses, even magazine perks. Along the way, I've uncovered countless ways the game's UI misleads us, and I'm going to share it all with you. Now, I know we've previously discussed the best ship parts in the game, and we've built numerous overpowered ships together, ships that crush even the most difficult enemies on extreme difficulty. But I realize that it takes time to level up your character and to earn those skill points, as well as to earn enough money to build these ships, and there are plenty of competing skills to put your hard-earned skills into. So I set out to create a tool that would tell you what the most powerful ship parts are for whatever character and skill level you are. It had to be easy to use, but also powerful and detailed enough for those of you that want to dive deep into the numbers. What it turned into was much more work than I expected, and I believe it actually represents a collaboration, bringing together work and learnings from many other members of this community, resulting in a tool that more accurately shows you the performance of key ship systems than the actual game itself. Now, before I jump in, a quick disclaimer. The more I dove into the abyss that is this game's stats, its UI, and the creation kit, the more my confidence in any information the game presented to me slipped further away. At the end of the day, my actual in-game test results over countless UT hours do appear to prove out the figures I'm about to share with you. But there is also a lot of information and math going on here, and though I have pored over these figures, performed countless in-game tests, started brand new characters to get a completely clean game, I'm fully aware that I very likely missed something. There's simply so much that the UI in this game gets wrong, that I really don't know what to trust anymore. So if you found something that I didn't identify, or believe there's a piece of this analysis that is misstated, I welcome that correction. I want this tool to be the best it can possibly be. Finally, this tool uses constant factors as approximations for what may likely be more complicated calculations in the actual game. What I mean by this is that the calculations in this tool may not be absolutely precise, but they should be very, very close. All that said, I could not be more excited to share this with you. This community has given so much, I want to be able to give something back to you. So allow me to explain how this tool works, and along the way we'll uncover the various ways that your ship's stats don't give you the full picture, especially when it comes to weapon performance. Now, the goal with this tool is not that it allows you to build an entire ship outside of the game. Rather, it is that any shipbuilder can see the best parts available to them for their key ship systems in just a few clicks, based on their character level and skills unlocked, and then where to buy them. Simply select your character's current level, your piloting skill, and your starship design skill, and the queries will update to show you the top 5 reactors available to you, the top 3 shield generators, the top 5 engines, and the most powerful weapons. Again, this is not trying to be a complete shipbuilder with all the ship parts, so the remaining ship parts that are not as critical to overall performance, such as cargo, landing gear, structural pieces, etc., are left up to you. I also wanted to provide choices for each of these significant modules, so rather than simply present one option for each ship system, it's presenting multiple choices as there are trade-offs to each piece. For example, the first section, which displays reactors, displays the top 5 reactors for your current level, and it determines them based on a combination of the most important stats for that specific ship system. For reactors, that's not only the power generated, which powers the other systems on your ship, but its hull value, which acts as your ship's primary source of health points, and each reactor's mass, as mass negatively impacts engine performance, and reactors are a significant source of overall ship mass. So this tool attempts to provide a ranking considering each of those primary statistics. For shields, shield health is the most important factor when determining a shield. Secondary is how much shield health it can regenerate per second, which is based on a shield's regen rate and its overall total health. Third, again, we must consider overall mass. so those 3 factors are highlighted in this list of the top 3 shields available to your character. Now for engines, it's a bit trickier, and if you've watched any of my prior analytics videos that cover engine performance, you'll know why. Engine performance is not fully conveyed to us in the game's UI, but this tool considers all factors of engine performance, allowing you to choose the best engine for your ship's true class. Either a lightweight combat fighter, a good-at-everything master of nothing all-around performer, or a heavy cargo hauler. To do that, there's an extra drop-down selector available for you to specify your engine priority for your ship, and changing that selection will change what statistics this tool prioritizes when it displays the best engines for your character and skill level. If you select top speed, then Class A engines, headlined by the White Dwarf 3015s that have an even faster top speed, will be displayed, assuming your level and skill allows for them. Also, a quick highlight on the Ammon 7 engines, which have the highest boost speed of any engine in the game. That doesn't put them above the White Dwarf 3015s in my opinion, as their cruising speed is just the typical Class A speed, but their boost speed only lasts a fraction of a second. It's still very interesting, nonetheless. Now if you select excess mass support, this will rank the engines by the amount of extra mass the engines can support, over and above their own mass, before losing engine performance. And by engine performance, I'm not only referring to the mobility stat displayed in the UI, but also acceleration, which is not displayed in the UI. I did numerous tests to try to determine how acceleration is impacted by mass, and while my calculations are not absolutely precise, I did determine that once a ship's mass, multiplied by a factor of 45, give or take, once that exceeds its total engine thrust value, your acceleration performance begins to decline noticeably in gameplay. You'll also notice an acceleration percent stat at the top of this tool, and that indicator will show you when your acceleration performance begins to drop below that full performance threshold. So prioritizing excess mass support will generally display Class C or B engines, which have slower top speeds, but can haul more mass before losing mobility or acceleration performance. Selecting the mobility statistic as your engine priority will prioritize exactly that, the mobility statistic as displayed in the shipbuilder UI in the game. Some people still care only about this stat, which really is just your ship's ability to rotate, and this is the one and only area where the SAL 6830 engines are the best, so if you only care about rotation while going slow in a straight line, I included this option for you. Finally, you can select All Around, which attempts to weight each of these factors to determine the best overall engine across all stats for your character and skill level. So cycle through each of these priorities, and you'll be able to find the best performing engine for what you care about most. Now, let's quickly talk about the grav drive before going into weapons, as weapons are a bit of a rabbit hole, and I think I ended up in Wonderland more than a few times. I'm very thankful for all the Terror Brews and some junk flush, let's just say that. Now, you've heard me say in nearly all of my prior videos that to pick a grav drive, you simply need to find one that provides you with at least 28 light years of jump range at the lowest possible mass. And that's because the farthest distance between 2 star systems in the entire game that cannot be shortened is about 27.244 light years. So long as the shipbuilder UI says 28 light years, that's good enough. Well, technically your jump range is a decimal, even though the UI displays it as a whole number. So this tool will let you calculate your needed jump thrust using your desired jump range as a decimal, possibly saving you a bit of mass on a grav drive in the process. Simply enter your character's astrodynamic skill level, which can boost your jump range, and then select your desired jump range from the drop-down menu, with the final 3 options being distances required to reach some of the highest level star systems in the game. If you have no interest in going to those systems, choose something less. Finally, enter any additional mass you anticipate having on your ship over and above any modules you've already selected within this tool, and it will display the grav drives that provide your desired jump range, considering the mass of your ship as entered here, and it will sort the grav drives ascending order of their total mass, so you can simply pick the lightest one assuming it connects nicely on your ship. Further, at the top of this tool, the amount of fuel required for the farthest jump in the game will also be displayed, which is dependent on both your astrodynamic skill, your crew's astrodynamic skill, Nova Galactic magazines collected, and the jump thrust of your selected grav drive, which the higher your grav drive jump thrust, the more fuel it consumes. Alright, let's talk about weapons. The weapon UI is completely broken. Some of this we already knew, and I covered in my previous video that went deep into the difference between the PBO 175 auto helion beams and the Exterminator 95 MEV auto helion beams. and the fact that they were burst weapons, which the game doesn't tell you, and the fact that they have a burst delay, which the game also doesn't tell you, and that this delay impacts what the game's UI says is their firing rate, such that their firing rate is actually less than what the UI says. Well, it gets worse. A lot worse. You see, not only is the firing rate of the PBO-175 autohelion beams incorrectly displayed, but the firing rate of all burst firing weapons, including the Exterminator 95 MeV autohelion beams. To understand this, let's go back to the classroom. Now, the firing rate displayed in the UI is the shots fired per second. At least, that's what it is meant to display. And for most weapons, that is true, and I know because I did a lot of testing. But what we first need to understand is that we've been talking about weapons incorrectly. It's not accurate to say there are auto and non-auto weapons. In reality, there are single-shot, automatic, and burst weapons, the latter two falling into what we have previously called auto-firing weapons. For single-shot weapons, what we would call non-auto weapons, their firing rate is what is displayed in the game's UI, and also for automatic weapons, which are in the auto category. But there is that other weapon type in the auto-firing category, burst weapons. Burst weapons, as their name indicates, fire a burst of multiple shots. For most burst weapons, they fire 3 shots in one burst, after which they have a specified delay before firing again. This delay is typically 0.3 seconds, but for the PBO-175s, it's 0.5 seconds, which is why their damage per second ended up being worse than the Exterminators. But there are more factors we need to consider to calculate a true firing rate for burst weapons. One of them is a weapon's attack delay. Attack delay is defined as the amount of time before the next shot may fire, which would be the inverse of its firing rate, or 1 divided by the firing rate. So a weapon such as the PBO-175s, with a stated firing rate of 6, would have an attack delay of 1/6 a second, or 0.166 repeating. So to calculate the true rate of fire of auto burst weapons, we need to know how long it takes to fire a full burst, which we can calculate as the number of shots per burst, -1 because the first shot doesn't have an attack delay, multiplied by the attack delay, then add to that the burst delay. And this is the amount of time to fire a single burst. We can then take this figure and divide by the number of shots per burst to get the true attack delay, the inverse of which is the true firing rate. What we find is that the firing rate of the PBO-175 autohelion beams is actually 3.6, not 6, in fact nearly half of what the UI suggests. For the Exterminator 95 MEVs, they have a true firing rate of 4.29, not 5 as the UI suggests. And this is true for all other burst weapons. When we plug this data into our prior sustained DPS calculations, the Exterminator 95 MEVs are still better than the PBO-175s, but not by as large a margin. Their burst DPS is still great, but their sustained DPS is not as good as we thought. And this tool takes all of that into account. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because our previous sustained DPS calculation was assuming a weapon was fully powered with the possible 12 full power points, how often do you fully allocate power to your weapons? There simply isn't enough reactor power, even with the top reactors, to get top engine performance, top shield performance, and to fully power 3 weapon groups. Now I'm assuming you are fully powering engines and shields, otherwise you won't last long on higher difficulty levels. Well, this tool also calculates sustained damage per second of all weapons given their recharge rate at any power level, and including whether or not they have an additional recharge delay before they begin recharging. Simply select the power level and watch it update. Now, for those of you curious as to how recharge rate works, it's basically on an inverted curve. Here in this chart, I've graphed the recharge rates of a few weapons in the game, and you can see the missiles are in the blue line on the upper right, barely fitting on this chart, as they take forever to reload. Auto weapons take less, and then non-auto or single firing are faster still. The main takeaway here is that as you increase power allocation, the recharge rate declines in a non-linear fashion, meaning your return on power investment is diminishing, particularly for non-auto weapons. The function being your weapon's stated recharge rate divided by your power allocated over 12, plus any fixed recharge delay if applicable. Again, you can dive deep into the numbers in this workbook if you're more curious. Which, let's take a moment and look at some extremely interesting analysis here now that we have this formula. You see, you probably already know how turret weapons receive double the benefit from skill bonuses with their additional automated weapon systems perk. Well, most turrets are auto weapons, meaning they have a magazine, and they also have a bit slower base recharge time, so their sustained DPS is a bit less than their burst DPS. But you'll notice, as I maximize my skills within this tool, the Obliterator 250 MEV auto alpha turrets jumps to the top, not only with a high burst DPS, but also an almost equal sustained DPS. And I found this surprising. In fact, when I first saw it, I thought it was an error. So when I went to investigate, I found that these Obliterator 250 alpha turrets actually have a recharge rate of 0.6 of a second, giving them a recharge rate on par with single-shot weapons, some of the fastest in the game. Plus, they have no extra recharge delay. But even more important, their attack delay, the time it takes to fire a shot, is 2/3 of a second, which is just higher than that recharge rate. What this means is that they basically never run out of ammo. And to prove it, I fired up the game, jumped to Serpentis, and put 1 point of power into these turrets. And sure enough, they never lost a charge. And this was on very hard difficulty, meaning you get the insane dual skill benefit, and you only have to allocate 1 point of reactor power to these weapons, and you're still getting one of the fastest recharge rates in the entire game, and some of the best burst and sustained DPS in the entire game. These are basically a cheat code. But wait, that's not all. How do skill bonuses and crew perks impact the DPS of each weapon? Well, this tool takes those into account too. And honestly, this is where things get really, really messy. Much of what I'm about to share about ship weapon skill perks appears to have only been known by a few individuals and or those that have worked on the Starfield Community Patch, as many of these quirks and inconsistencies look to have been at least noticed, if not altered by that community patch. So what are those quirks and inconsistencies? Allow me to list a few for you. If you take a look at this table, you'll see the shipbuilder UI compared to actual gameplay is a complete disaster. In most cases, it's wrong. In fact, the only case I could see where it was correct was for the particle beam weapon system skill. So, for example, ballistic weapon systems, it says it increases damage to both shield and hull damage, but in reality it's just hull damage. The inverse is true for energy weapons, but the UI actually shows no boost to either damage, even though you're actually getting some in gameplay. It's honestly a complete mess. A couple things that are interesting to call out here is that there are in fact a few particle beam weapons that benefit from both energy and particle beam weapon system skills. In fact, there's about 8 of these, and they're all Class A weapons. This includes the Vanguard Obliterator autoprojectors. Now, there are higher class versions of these weapons, but they don't have the same benefit that these do, and I don't know why. When you look at the creation kit, you'll find that these weapons have keywords for both energy and particle beam weapon systems in their data, and again, no explanation as to why this might be. The other interesting thing is the isolation skill does appear to boost both shield and hull damage for weapons and for all weapon types, but in reality it's only impacting hull damage for ballistics, missiles, and particle beams, and turrets too. This is still a great buff if you travel without companions, but the UI is completely broken in this case. Lastly, we already talked a little bit about the automated weapon system skill for turrets, particularly those Obliterator 250 MEV auto alpha turrets. And in this case, the UI is, again, a mixed bag. It's more consistent than for the other weapon skills, and we do get the stacking effect. But again, the energy turret weapons are not showing the energy weapon system's impact as you'd expect, even though in gameplay you are getting the benefit there. So altogether, the UI is completely broken, but this tool does take into account what we're actually seeing in real gameplay terms. And we're not done yet. When you place crew members on your ship that show a skill that impacts a certain weapon type, the game files in the creation kit show that those crew perks should result in an increase to that weapon's damage. But the game's UI shows no change. With or without your crew members, when you're actually piloting your ship or not, the damage displayed in the UI is not updated for your crew members. However, based on my testing, you are still receiving a bonus damage perk in actual gameplay from your crew. I mean, the game's UI could hardly be more broken. But again, this new tool still calculates the real gameplay damage. And as I've already said, I believe most of this is actually fixed or addressed in the Starfield Community Patch, though I can't confirm that. We shouldn't still have to apply a mod that disables achievements just to get correct weapon damage information. There's really no excuse for this. And I'll say it again, I spent hours testing and retesting, poring over data, looking through the creation kit, just to make sure I wasn't missing something, and that this new tool wasn't missing something. And that doesn't mean it's 100% accurate, or perhaps my game is bugged in a way that has blinded me, so you may find a discrepancy. Please let me know if you do. And further, I'll say you can always leave the skill selectors alone to simply see what the base weapon performance is, adjusted for correct firing rates and power allocation. And there's a separate tab that lists the base unaltered weapon stats too. Now, a few final points. If you do actually utilize the checkboxes, there is a separate shopping list tab that will outline what vendors carry those parts, and exactly where you can find the vendor. It even has a star map for you. All of that data behind the scenes can be found on the other specific tabs. I've included my work on engines, shields, etc. And remember, the factors used here to determine top performance are not exact, but I do believe they are very close. Now, most importantly, I need to mention all of the work others have done that I have merely benefited from and brought together to include within this tool. There's a separate citations tab that not only lists each shipbuilder, but has specific links to their work that I leaned on, which I corroborated through my independent testing, and that I learned so much from. I've previously mentioned Stalviet's work on weapons and Alan's projects on burst weapons, but I also need to specifically call out RUX 616 for their incredible data mining work on weapons and recharge rates, Lucid Wolf for the list of ship parts and vendors, among many others. And if I'm missing anyone, please let me know so their work can also be added. So my hope is that you can use this tool to quickly analyze the best ship parts for your character level, or dive deep on all the stats, figures, and formulas behind the scenes. And as I said in a previous video, math is hard. I don't have a physics degree. I'm not a data engineer. So if something looks amiss, kindly point it out and let's improve on this together. As I dug deeper and deeper into ship stats, I realized there is so much that the game isn't telling us. And in order to try to bring all that together in one place, this is the result. I've included a link to this new tool, which is built in Google Sheets, in the description of this video. Make your own copy on your own drive to make your own edits. Finally, you all have sent me many ship build requests, and I haven't forgotten about them. Some are more serious than others, but I sincerely hope to give them all a shot, so keep them coming. Now, you also may know that I play on Xbox, and I don't actually own a PC, let alone a powerful one, so investigating all of this in the creation kit required that I rent one in the cloud for the short term. So a huge thank you to those of you who have supported this channel via purchasing Terra Brews on my Ko-fi site. You are real shipbuilders, and I hope using those Terra Brews to give this work back to you can even convey just a little bit of my gratitude. Finally, I have a little bit of hope that I could use my remaining time to create some of my ship builds as mods that I can more easily share with you. No promises, but if that is something you'd be interested in, any encouragement helps. And until next time, keep building.
I can't be a part of this. We have to talk.